We noticed it before anyone spoke, the way a few conversations slowed at once, the way a set of keys landed on a picnic table and stayed there, unmistakable. Sometimes a story announces itself without asking for attention. This was one of those moments. Paige Reynolds was already there, standing near the rented pavilion by the lake, watching her family gather the way they always did. What followed was her voice. I was balancing a paper plate when the Audi pulled in. It rolled up slow, deliberate, right past the spot where I'd parked my old Honda. Dark paint, clean lines. Lucas knew exactly where to stop so everyone could see it. "Hey!" he called out, lifting the key fob like it was nothing. "Hope I didn't miss anything." My mother's face lit up. "There he is. Look at you." My dad stepped closer, circling the car. "This is the new one company lease," Lucas said. "Audi A7, regional perk." "That's my son," Dad said, loud enough for the table to hear. Lucas grinned. "Gotta look the part. Clients notice." I kept my eyes on the potato salad. Someone bumped my elbow. "Sorry," my cousin muttered, already turning back to Lucas. Mom waved him over. "Tell Uncle Frank about the promotion." Lucas leaned against the table. "Sales director now. 3 states. A lot of travel." "That's huge," Aunt Denise said. "You must be exhausted." "It's worth it," he said. "This is how you move up." Dad glanced my way. "Paige, you're still working from home." "Right." "Yeah," I said. "Still consulting." He nodded once. Like that answered everything. Lucas laughed lightly. "Must be nice." "No commute." "It is," I said. "Most days." That was the end of it. People asked Lucas about flights, bonuses, dinners on the company card. No one asked me anything else. Not what I worked on, not who I worked with. Just the quiet assumption that if it mattered, it would look like his car. From where we stood, it was already clear who the room believed. We could feel it too, not the money, the space it created. I shifted my plate to the edge of the table. Aunt Anne came up beside me. "Hey," she said. "You made it." I did. She smiled. "Good. We'll catch up in a minute." Across the pavilion, Lucas's voice carried again. Confident. Practiced. "Next year," he said. "I'll probably upgrade." If this sounds familiar, you already know how these moments settle in a room. Stay with us. I watched the lake instead. The water didn't care what anyone drove. Lucas didn't sit. He hovered. One hand stayed on the back of a folding chair while the other kept that key fob in reach, like it might wander off if he let it. People rotated in and out of his orbit. Uncle Frank, Aunt Denise again. Someone from my mom's side I barely knew. 3 states, Lucas was saying. That's the real jump. Once you manage territory that size, everything changes. Dad nodded along. That's serious responsibility. It's pressure, Lucas replied, shrugging like it didn't bother him. But I thrive on it. Mom leaned closer. Are they talking about another promotion? Not yet, Lucas said. But it's coming. She smiled anyway, the kind of smile that already believed it. I sat down at the far end of the table, next to a cooler no one was using. My phone buzzed. A work message. I glanced at it, then turned the screen face down. Aunt Denise slid into the seat across from me. "So, Paige," she started, lowering her voice a little. "You're still doing that consulting thing?" "Yeah, still doing it." "That's nice," she said, nodding slowly. "Flexible. Flexible," I repeated. Lucas laughed from a few seats down. "Paige's got the dream. Pajamas and a laptop." A couple people chuckled. Not mean. Just easy. I felt my shoulders tighten anyway. "It's not really like that," I said, keeping my voice level. Lucas lifted his hands. "Hey, I'm jealous. I'm never home." Dad glanced over. "Well, some of us need structure." I took a breath. "I've got structure." He nodded, already turning back to Lucas. The conversation had moved on. Across the table, my cousin Mark leaned in toward Lucas. "So what does a sales director actually make these days?" Lucas grinned. Depends on the year. Base is solid. Bonuses can get interesting. Mom laughed softly. He's doing very well. I reached for my water bottle. The cap stuck. I twisted harder than I needed to. For a second, the table went quiet. Just long enough for that silence to feel pointed. We noticed how quickly everyone filled it again. Someone asked about flights. Someone else mentioned a client dinner in Chicago. The rhythm returned. I looked down at my plate. Food untouched. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Anne appeared beside me. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just tired. She studied me for a second, then nodded. When you're ready, tell me about Phoenix. Later. I said, maybe. She smiled like she understood and stepped away. Lucas laughed again. Louder this time. The Audi keys caught the light. I took another sip of water and watched the lake beyond the tables. It stayed calm, even as everything else kept rearranging itself around one story. I'd just stood up to toss my plate when Aunt Anne caught my sleeve. Walk with me, she said quietly, already turning toward the buffet. We moved along the table, past half-empty trays and stacks of napkins curling at the edges. She picked up a cookie, broke it in half without thinking, handed me one. You eating? She asked. Eventually. She nodded. That's what I thought. We stopped near the end of the table, away from Lucas and the crowd forming around him. I could still hear his laugh carry over the water. Anne leaned against the table. How's Phoenix going? I hesitated. Just a beat too long. It's busy, I said, but good. Still on schedule. Yeah, we're hitting the next milestone next month. She smiled. Good. That one mattered. Behind us, a chair scraped. Someone laughed too loud. The sound cut through the space between us. Anne tilted her head. They still don't know, do they? I exhaled. No. She frowned, then shook her head once. I don't get that. It's easier this way, I said. Most of the time. Anne didn't answer right away. She took a bite of her cookie, chewed slowly. You still leading the transformation piece, she asked? Or did they expand your scope? They expanded it, I said. Operations and systems. Data, too. She let out a low whistle before catching herself. That's not small. No, I said. It isn't. Her voice stayed casual, but her next words landed heavier than she meant them to. And that's still the 3-year engagement. Right. The sound behind us thinned out. I felt it before I turned. The way conversations stalled. The way a few heads shifted in our direction. I didn't answer fast enough. What engagement my mom called from the table. Anne looked past me, confused. Phoenix Systems, she said. Paige's project. Lucas's laugh cut off mid-breath. Dad stood. What project? I felt my throat tighten. Anne's eyes flicked to me. Realization settling in. Oh, she said softly. You didn't tell them. We noticed how quickly the air changed. Not loud, just heavier. I turned to face them. My parents. Lucas. A half-circle of people pretending not to listen. It's a consulting engagement. I said, with Phoenix. Lucas frowned. Since when? For a while? I said. Anne stepped back, giving me space. Her voice stayed steady, but there was regret in it. She's been leading it. Anne added. Full transformation. No one spoke. I felt the weight of it then. Not the numbers, the attention. The sudden focus that had never been there before. I folded the napkin in my hand. Once, then again, waiting for the room to decide what to do with the truth now sitting between us. My mom stepped closer, her paper plate tilted just enough that a brownie slid toward the edge. Paige, she said. Careful. What is she talking about? I glanced at Aunt Anne. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the folding table. It's a consulting project, I said. For Phoenix Systems. Dad crossed his arms. That doesn't explain anything. Lucas leaned forward. Phoenix like, the software company. Yes, that's not a small client, he said. What do you mean? Project. I felt everyone waiting, not leaning in. Exactly. Just paused. It's a full digital transformation, I said. Enterprise systems, operations, data infrastructure. Mom blinked. For how long? 3 years. Lucas let out a short laugh. You're freelancing from home. I'm independent. I said, that's different. Dad shook his head. Paige, be serious. I am. Anne cleared her throat. It's a major engagement. Paige has been leading it since the beginning. Mom turned to her. Leading. Yes. Anne said. End to end. The brownie tipped off the plate and hit the ground. No one moved to pick it up. How much does something like that even pay? Uncle Frank asked. Not unkindly. Just curious. I hesitated. My stomach tightened. Anne answered before I could stop her. The contract's valued at $1.8 million over the 3 years. The word million didn't echo. It didn't need to. Lucas stared at her. That's not possible. Anne frowned. It is. There's also an extension clause. If Phoenix exercises it, the total value pushes close to $2.7 million. Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. Mom's voice came out thin. Over 3 years. Yes, Anne said. Milestone-based. I felt heat creep up my neck. It's not paid all at once. Lucas laughed again, sharper this time. So you're telling us you make, what? Almost $1 million a year? No, I said. Revenue isn't income. Dad held up a hand. Slow down. You work from home. You turn down family trips because of deadlines. And now you're saying this. I didn't say it. I said, Anne did. Silence pressed in. Even the kids had drifted closer, sensing something they couldn't name. We could tell this was the moment where everything tilted, even if no one said it out loud. Mom looked at me, eyes wide. Why didn't you tell us I swallowed? I thought I did. That's not the same thing, Dad said. You never explained it like this. Lucas stepped back, shaking his head. This is insane. It's my job. I said, it's what I've been doing. Anne shifted beside me. She's very good at it. I felt that land harder than the numbers. Dad rubbed his face. So this whole time, I said, I've been working. Mom reached out, then stopped herself. Paige, we had no idea. I nodded once. My hands were shaking now. Just a little. I know, I said. Around us. Conversations tried to restart. Failed. Then went quiet again. No one knew where to stand anymore. The story they'd been telling themselves had cracked, and nothing had rushed in to replace it yet. Mom sat down slowly, like her legs had given up before the rest of her had caught up. Paige, she said. Quieter now. Why didn't you tell us? The way she said it mattered. Not angry, not accusing, just lost. I did, I said. Dad looked at me. When, a while ago, I paused. About 1.5 years. Lucas scoffed. No, you didn't. I turned to him. I called. You were all there. Dad was watching the game. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad frowned. I don't remember that. I know, I said. It didn't last long. Mom pressed her lips together. What did you say that I'd landed a major client? A Fortune 500 company? A multi-year engagement? She blinked. And you said, that's nice. Honey, I shrugged. Then you said dinner was burning. The table stayed quiet. Dad shifted his weight. You never explained what it meant. I tried. I said, a few times. Lucas crossed his arms. That's not fair. You made it sound small. I didn't make it sound like anything. I said, I just stopped pushing. Anne stepped in carefully. She told me. We talked through the whole thing. Scope, timelines, everything. Mom turned to her. You knew yes. Anne said, because I asked. That landed harder than I expected. Dad exhaled slowly. We thought you were still figuring things out. I was, I said, while I was working. Lucas shook his head. You let us think you were barely getting by. I felt something tighten in my chest. No. You decided that. He opened his mouth, then closed it. We could see the moment stretch, not breaking, just hanging there. Mom wiped under her eyes. Why didn't you push harder? I looked at her, because every time I tried to explain, it felt like I was defending myself. Dad leaned forward. We just wanted you to be safe. I know, I said, but safe sounded a lot like small. Silence again, not sharp, heavy. I took a breath. There's something else you don't know. Lucas glanced up. What now? 2 years ago? I said. Phoenix offered to expand the role. Bigger team, longer hours, more travel. Anne nodded. It was a big step. I turned it down. I said, because you told me not to embarrass the family chasing risky freelance work. Mom's face fell. We said that? Yes. At the same time, Lucas was getting help with his apartment deposit, the car lease, the reassurance that it was all worth it. Lucas stared at the ground. I didn't know. He said, quieter. I know. I said, you weren't supposed to. Dad rubbed his temples. So you chose less. I chose what I could carry. I said, and it still worked. Mom reached out this time and touched my arm. We should have listened. I nodded. You knew I was consulting. You just never asked what it meant. The words sat there, not sharp, just true. Someone behind us cleared a throat. Plates shifted. The reunion tried to breathe again. I looked at Anne. She gave me a small nod. Lucas finally spoke. I'm sorry for how I talked about your work. Thank you, I said. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't a reset. But it was the first time anyone had said it out loud, and that mattered more than they probably realized. Dad pulled out a chair and sat down again, slower this time, like the ground had shifted and he needed to test it. So, he said, looking at the table instead of at me, walk us through it. I hesitated. What part? The part we don't understand? Mom said. All of it. I guess. I nodded. Okay. I leaned back against the table. My hands were still a little unsteady, so I folded them together. The Phoenix contract runs over 3 years, I said. Total revenue comes out to about $1.8 million. It's paid in chunks, tied to milestones. Nothing up front that's wild. Lucas frowned. Revenue isn't what you actually make. Right? No, I said. It's what the business brings in. Dad looked up. Business, yes. Mine. I continued before anyone could interrupt. After expenses, insurance, travel, software, taxes, everything that comes with being independent, my take-home last year was around $450,000. The words didn't echo. They just landed. Mom's hand went to her chest. That's more than me. Dad finished quietly. I nodded once. This year. Yes. Lucas let out a breath. That's a lot. It's also uneven. I said, some years are lower. Earlier years were much lower. Anne spoke up from behind me. She lived very simply when she started. Put most of it away. Dad looked at me again. You don't spend like it. No, I said. I don't need to. The table stayed still. Even the kids nearby had gone quiet, staring at their phones without really scrolling. We could see how the numbers changed the air, not because they were impressive, but because they didn't fit anywhere the family had placed her before. Mom swallowed. Where do you even put all that? Some goes to retirement, some to investments, some stays liquid. Dad raised his eyebrows. You own your place outright, don't you? Yes. Lucas blinked. You paid it off years ago. He laughed, but it came out thin. And you drive that car. My car works, I said. That's enough for me. Mom shook her head slowly. All this time. All this time. I repeated. A breeze came off the lake. Napkins fluttered. Someone farther down the table started packing up leftovers, then stopped, unsure if it was okay to move. Dad rubbed his hands together. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said. I just wanted you to understand. Lucas looked at his keys on the table. The Audi logo caught the light again, but this time it felt smaller. I thought success was supposed to look louder, he muttered. I watched him sit with that. For a moment, no one spoke. The space wasn't hostile anymore, just unfamiliar. And for the first time that afternoon, I felt like I wasn't explaining myself to be believed. I was explaining because they were finally listening. Lucas found me near the water when the crowd finally loosened. The pavilion noise softened behind us. Kids running again. Laughter trying to come back. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded and followed him down the path. Gravel crunched under our shoes. He kicked at it, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. I've been an ass, he said after a few steps. For years. I didn't answer right away. The lake moved in small ripples. Steady. Not dramatic. I know. I said eventually. He stopped walking. I really didn't think you were doing all that. I know. He let out a short breath. I thought you were just comfortable, coasting. I wasn't coasting, I said. I was building. He nodded, staring at the water. I leased that car because I don't want anyone thinking I'm falling behind. The Audi, I asked? Yeah. He laughed without humor. Costs more every month than I want to admit. Insurance, too. I leaned against the railing. You don't have to keep up with anyone. He looked at me. Easy for you to say. You already won. That's not how it felt at the time. I said. And it didn't feel like winning when no one cared. He swallowed. I make good money. On paper. But I don't have much saved. I stayed quiet. I've got maybe 8,000 in the bank. He added. Everything else goes out as fast as it comes in. He shook his head. You're sitting on a house you paid off years ago. I'm 30 and nervous all the time. We noticed how small the space between them felt now. Without the crowd around, I turned toward him. I didn't do anything special. You did something, he said. You didn't spend it. I spent where it mattered, I said. And I said no a lot. He stared at the water again. Can you help me? I didn't answer immediately. My chest tightened, not from anger, from caution. Help how I asked, not with money. He said quickly, with figuring it out. The real way, I don't want to keep pretending. I thought about the years he'd joked about my work, the comments, the tone. You'd have to listen. I said, and it wouldn't be comfortable. He nodded. I'm tired of comfortable. Then we start with a plan, I said. And you actually follow it? He let out a breath he'd been holding. Okay. We stood there for a moment. No big reconciliation. Just the lake and the space where something shifted. Behind us, the reunion noise rose again. Someone called Lucas's name. He didn't answer right away. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for not seeing you. Thank you, I said. He walked back toward the pavilion. I stayed by the water a little longer, letting the quiet hold. When I turned around, the Audi sat where he'd parked it earlier, still polished, still impressive, just not as loud anymore. By the time I walked back, the tables had shifted, plates stacked. Someone passed around leftovers in foil. The reunion was trying to find its old shape again. Mom caught my eye first. She stood up like she wasn't sure if she should. Paige, she said, touching my arm. Can we talk? I nodded. We moved a few steps away. Not far. Close enough that everyone could still see us. Far enough to pretend we had privacy. I'm sorry, she said. The words came out uneven. I didn't listen. I thought I knew what your life looked like. I know, I said. She pressed her lips together. I should have asked. Yes, I said. You should have. She nodded, eyes wet, then surprised me by not trying to argue that part. Dad joined us. He cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said, about a lot of things. I waited. I thought stability meant one thing, he continued, and I kept measuring you against that. I felt that, I said. He looked down at his hands. I didn't mean to make you feel small. I don't think you meant to, I said, but it happened anyway. We noticed how careful everyone suddenly became with their words, like the ground was new and might crack again. Mom squeezed my hand. We're proud of you. I took that in. Not as a cure, just as information. Thank you, I said. Lucas hovered a few feet away, watching. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod. I returned it. Aunt Anne passed by with a stack of plates. I'll leave you to it, she said quietly. Dad exhaled. I don't know how we fix this. We don't fix it today. I said, we just stop pretending it didn't happen. He nodded slowly. That feels fair. Around us. Conversation picked back up. Someone asked about dessert. Kids argued over the last cookie. I sat down again, this time at the table. The same table. Different weight. Mom pulled up a chair beside me. She didn't talk. Just sat there. I stayed too. Not to prove anything. Just because I could. When the sun dipped lower, the light softened across the lake. The reunion didn't feel healed. It felt quieter. More honest. And that was enough for now. I left before it got dark. Not abruptly. No announcement. Just the quiet kind of leaving that happens when a day has given you everything it's going to give. Mom hugged me longer than usual. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Careful. Like he was still learning the shape of things. Lucas waved from the table. His keys stayed in his pocket this time. Drive safe, Mom said. I will. The Honda started the same way it always did. No hesitation, no drama. I pulled out of the parking lot and let the road open up in front of me. On the drive back, my phone buzzed once. A message from Phoenix. A quick update on the next deliverable. I replied at a red light. Thumbs steady, then set the phone down. Nothing about my life felt different. Tomorrow, I'd still have the call with the operations team. Next week, I'd still review the data migration plan. The work didn't shift just because my family finally saw it. The contracts didn't pause. The deadlines didn't soften. And somehow, that was comforting. At home, I parked in the same spot and carried my bag upstairs. The condo was quiet, familiar. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, and stood there for a second longer than usual. I thought about the years I spent explaining myself in half sentences. The way I learned to stop mid-thought when I saw eyes glaze over. The way I built something solid anyway. I hadn't hidden my success. I'd just stopped performing it. Sitting at the kitchen counter, I opened my laptop and skimmed tomorrow's agenda. Everything looked normal. Good. I closed it again. Paige Reynolds didn't become successful because her family finally understood her. She had already been successful the first time a client trusted her with something that mattered. The first time a check cleared without hesitation. The first time she realized she didn't need permission to take herself seriously. That realization didn't make me louder. It made me steadier. If this story stayed with you, even quietly, you're welcome to pass it along or sit with it a little longer. We'll be here. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with a door closing softly, a light left on, and a life continuing exactly as it was meant to.